He's a Democrat who won a seat in Congress from a Trump-loving district. Now freshman Staten Island Congressman Max Rose is looking back on his first 100 days. Has he kept up to his promises? And how will he meet the challenge of two Republicans who are out to get his seat?
Now, from 42nd and 2nd, this is Pix 11 News Close-Up with Marvin Scott.
Good morning. He was a Democrat in Republican territory, a Trump-loving district on Staten Island. Now, that's where Max Rose unseated the Republican incumbent to represent the 11th Congressional District. He ran as a reformer on a platform to stem gun control, gun violence, end the opioid crisis, and fix health care. This weekend marks his 100 days in Congress. We're pleased to welcome to Pix 11 News Close-Up Congressman Max Rose.
Thanks for having me on, brother.
Last time we had you were running in a campaign.
You're my good luck charm.
Yeah, thank you. You're a freshman. This is your baptism in politics.
Baptism in fire, man. It's
okay.
Unbelievable.
You got sworn in when we had a government shutdown.
Yep.
You're in a cauldron. Was it an awakening for you?
Well, I think that, look, news changes so fast these days. It's important for us to think back to what was happening 3 months ago. I was part of the first new class of Congress people who was sworn in during a shutdown. That shutdown lasted for 30 days, and it was a perfect example of how our politics is broken. They had a compromise, late December or so. Then people started playing politics, shut down the government. Millions of people suffered as a result, to include many people in my district working in the Coast Guard, TSA. They signed up to serve our country. And they never, ever thought that we would turn our backs on them. Then we had to set up food pantries for them, do gift card drives, things that we never thought would happen, do volunteer efforts to clean up federal parks. 6 weeks after the shutdown, we arrive at the same compromise that was eminently obvious right when it started. But it's our politics that failed us. So it was just yet another reminder of why I and so many others got into this game, is to fix this, fix our politics.
So as the new kid on the block, were you disappointed what you saw?
No, what's unfortunate is that I wasn't even surprised. That's what's unfortunate. You know, that our politicians have just plain old failed us. And it really struck me, though, when I spoke to some people at the Coast Guard base in my district. And they were talking to other families who actually had deployed members of the Coast Guard at that moment in harm's way. Can you imagine this? And we cut off their pay. Can you think of something more un-American than that? I had the opportunity to go sit down in the Situation Room with 6 Democrats, 6 Republicans during the height of the shutdown with the president, the vice president, and several others. And we tried to give a very simple message. And it was twofold. One, open up the government right away, please, because we cannot use shutdowns as tools of negotiations. And second, once you do, there will be room for compromise. And compromise is exactly what we did. But we shouldn't have to bring ourselves to the brink of collapse, to seeing our airports shut down, to catalyzing a national security crisis in order to do what the right thing is. But here's the thing, Marvin. This wasn't just about the shutdown. This showed us what our politics is like, plain and simple, for every other issue. What we constantly do is we bring our system to the brink of collapse and chaos, and then we do the right thing and the obvious thing. We're doing it with climate change. We're doing it with infrastructure as well.
From what you're saying, it sounds like you're saying what the critics are saying, that this is a dysfunctional Congress that is more partisan politics than any other business.
Yeah, that's obvious. It's true.
And what do you feel has been your biggest challenge in your first 100 days?
Besides finding where the bathrooms are. Listen,
all right, okay, go on.
The biggest challenge, plain and simple, has been to try to figure out how to achieve things and to have a sense of urgency and to instill in my colleagues that same sense of urgency that the American people feel right now. I'll give you a good example. Roughly 6 years ago, Superstorm Sandy virtually almost destroyed Staten Island, South Brooklyn,
in your district,
many,
right.
and throughout New York City. Homes were wrecked. People's lives were upended. And a plan was put in place to build out a seawall on the east shore of Staten Island, a critical nation-leading resiliency project to protect us against the next superstorm. And then government waited. The money was sitting there in a bucket, in a pot, waiting. but the project wasn't getting started because of bureaucracy. So my first piece of legislation, which has already been signed by the president, was to eliminate that last piece of bureaucratic red tape to get our seawall started. And we're going to initiate construction either at the end of this year or early next, and I couldn't be more excited.
Now that bill is passed and it's been
bill has been passed and signed by the president.
So when is the work going to be done?
Our hope, our goal is by the end of this year to initiate the project.
Okay.
But what's important about this seawall, because all too often members of Congress, they feel like their only power, their only responsibility is legislative. Get a bill passed and then signed, sealed, delivered, we're done. That's not how we're going to treat this seawall. Okay, we did our part in Congress, but now we are going to continue to stay actively involved in this project because we have traffic concerns, right? We have to get 1 million pounds of stone into Staten Island. We want to keep the beaches open. You have to constantly be concerned about these quality of life issues because we have to show people that government can actually work.
I have to ask you this, because early on you called out one of your colleagues, a fellow Democrat from Minnesota, Congresswoman Omar. You called her out because of anti-Semitic remarks she made in February. And now she's under fire because of remarks she made about 9/11, saying something happened by somebody made something happen. And you're the only one I've seen quoted. The Democratic leadership has not called her out on this.
I'm not here to speak for anyone else, whether it's Elon or Senator Schumer or Speaker Pelosi. But what I can say is this, is I got into politics not out of allegiance to the Democratic Party. I don't have any allegiance to the Democratic Party. All I have is allegiance to the good people of Staten Island, South Brooklyn, New York City, New York State, and the American people. And for far too long, they have just been plain old ignored or ripped off by elected officials who pay more attention to lobbyists, corporate PACs, the swamp, as our president likes to call it. They pay more attention to that than the urgent needs that people are facing. So it's true, I did criticize Elon for comments that were highly insensitive.
Some people did something.
Well,
should we?
Now, let's talk about that, okay? And here's how I view what happened on September 11th. Because I told you again, I'm here to speak for myself. Radical terrorists attacked us on September 11th, 2001.
That's not what she says.
But I'm going to tell you what I think. Okay? Because you can invite her to come sit down with you. Radical terrorists attacked us. They killed thousands of people, many of whom, hundreds, were from Staten Island and South Brooklyn. We lost more cops, firemen, and first responders than any other district in America. And that pain still lives on. Every anniversary, every 9/11 anniversary, people still feel like their heart is getting ripped out of their bodies. But the pain is being felt in other ways, too. We are losing people every year. First responders, cops, firemen, construction workers who are at ground zero. And they are dying from 9/11 or ground zero related health ailments. We got to get this victims' compensation fund permanently reestablished.
Let's pick up on that in a moment. But first, let's finish before I have to go for a break. Should Congresswoman Omar be censured by Congress?
Look, again, as I said, what I am here to do is to speak for myself.
So how do you feel about that? Should she be censured?
What I think that we have to do is we have to have elected officials speaking truth forcefully and not caring about party. So not caring about what I want to do, what I want to do. And this is, I was in a room of 100 police officers yesterday. I'm tired of playing politics with this issue. I want to get the Victims' Compensation Fund permanently refunded for the duration of this century, so never again does a cop or a fireman or a first responder or a construction worker have to worry about whether their family is going to get the money they deserve, God forbid they pass to a 9/11 related illness. That's what I care about, Marvin. I am sick and tired of this. I really am. And more than me being sick and tired of it, the American people are sick and tired of these politics.
I think everyone would agree with you that these first responders deserve those funds from
the compensation
fund. But before I go to a break, please answer my question. What action should be taken, if any, against Congresswoman
I just said,
Omar?
If people disagree with her, they need to come out and say that they disagree with her.
You have said that.
She is one individual out of 435 independent contractors. Okay, and I'm not going to spend the entire duration of my congressional career talking about her. What I am going to do
should she be censured?
Let me finish. Let me finish, Marvin. In all seriousness, what I am going to spend my time doing is not going in this back and forth of backroom parlor politics. Nobody cares. What they care about is seeing our government working again. That's what they care about, and I urge you to focus on that as well.
We're going to take a break. Got more questions for Congressman Max Rose when Pix 11 News Close-Up continues. Stay with us. Back with our guest, the first-term congressman from Staten Island, Max Rose. 100 days this weekend. And it's been a tumultuous 100 days.
It certainly has been.
Let's talk about the Mueller report.
Please.
Now, you know as much as I guess the rest of us know. You're supposed to get a redacted version of it from Attorney General Barr next week. Are you satisfied with what you've heard so far?
Well, I think that the American people need to see the report. Let's take this back to the beginning, okay? From a high-level philosophical point, no one's above the law. Everybody should be held to certain standards, and that's what Congress is there for. But what my priority here is that nobody is playing politics and nobody is losing sight about what the American people care about. Because I can tell you right now, the people who live in Staten Island and South Brooklyn don't give two you-know-what about the Mueller report. They don't care about Russia. They don't care about the investigation, but they do care about the fact that they have the longest commuting times of anyone in the country. They do care about the fact that their health care costs have skyrocketed year in, year out, while their wages have stagnated. They do care about the fact that there used to be 10 union members on their block, and now there's 2 because unions have been decimated as a consequence of oversized corporate power. They care about that, and they sent me to D.C. to care about that. There's plenty of members of Congress that you can get on here that they spend day in, day out talking about Russia. The Republicans talk about impeachment more than the Democrats. The reason why they do that is because they actually don't have any real ideas for how they're going to solve problems. You got a long list, over 300 members of Congress you can invite to talk about that.
Republicans are talking about impeachment?
Republicans talk about impeachment more than the Democrats because they are trying to scare people. They're trying to make it as if the Democrats are going after the president and they don't actually want to do anything to help people. Everybody is playing politics. That's why the American people are so frustrated right now, because they feel like it's only during election time that people talk about infrastructure, talk about health care, talk about corruption, and then they go back to playing these games. I don't blame them for being so frustrated. It's not even dysfunction. It's attention deficit disorder. It's lying. It is a huge, huge problem. So I'm not going to be that guy. I'm not going to bite. I'm going to talk about what the American people and what the good people of Staten Island and South Brooklyn care about.
Conversely, if I may bring this up, Congressman, the Republican Party here in New York, they're running ads, and you're in it, standing next to
I made the cut.
Yeah, you made the cut with Speaker Pelosi.
Good.
And the line is, tell Pelosi and Max Rose to stop the partisan games and do their jobs.
Really?
To which you respond?
I couldn't care again, you know what, about what they are talking about. Look, here's the deal, okay? I'll give you the Republican Party in one quick snippet, all right? They have an obsession with talking about other people and not talking about their own solutions to problems. It could be Speaker Pelosi, it could be anybody else. They have this really odd obsession with making people afraid. So take it to me. Let's go. Democracy's a beautiful thing. I'm just happy they're paying attention to me this time, because last election, they ignored me. I beat my opponent by 7 points, more than any other contested election in New York State. Let's go again.
Back to the Mueller report.
Okay.
Now, Attorney General Barr is going to give you a redacted copy of this next week. Many of your colleagues are saying, we won't accept that. What action can you take?
It's important under these circumstances not to entertain hypotheticals, okay? We have to see what the report looks like when we get it. But again, everyone likes to say, well, look, Marvin, we're chewing gum and walking at the same time. But sometimes I fear that all the Democratic Party is talking about are these investigations. I want us to focus in and actually legislating around the things that we ran on: anti-corruption, healthcare costs, universal coverage, infrastructure. Wouldn't it be great to talk about how Staten Island's going to get another ferry service?
Let's talk about this. It was one of your campaign pledges. You were going to attack corruption, and you introduced a bill which is still before, I think it passed the House.
It passed the House.
Now at the Senate. Tell us, what is that bill going to do?
So
what's it going to do that other bills haven't done?
So H.R. 1 is the most comprehensive anti-corruption, pro-democracy bill, certainly put before Congress at least since the Watergate era. And it does a few things. First thing it does is goes after lobbyists, all right? There's members of Congress that have publicly said, you know what? I don't allow a lobbyist into my office unless they've paid. Now, me personally, I'm not taking a cent from corporate PACs or federal lobbyists. But actually, the deeper problem is not just the lobbyists, it's the fact that people can lobby even without self-identifying as one, registering as a lobbyist. They just call themselves special advisors and lobby for under 20% of the time. Now, it's certainly true that corporate PACs and federal lobbyists and the entire swamp has bought off politicians. So this bill also calls for a publicly funded matching program, and we're going to fund it via fees on these illicit actions by these super PACs and other insidious entities that have overtaken our system. We talk about same-day voter registration. We're talking about making Election Day a federal holiday. We're talking about protecting the rights of people to vote. We're also talking about not allowing foreign actors to buy our system via illegal foreign donations. The list goes on and on and on. But it's interesting. When I ran for office, the quote-unquote experts said, Max, nobody cares about the system. Max, no one cares where the money comes from. They just care about the issues. But the American people are smarter than that. They understand that if we do not fix our system, then we'll never be able to actually achieve the solutions that we all too often talk about during our campaigns. We got to get back to business, and H.R. 1's part and parcel of that.
Now, that passed the Democratic-controlled House. It's now over at the Republican-controlled Senate. What's the likelihood of that bill getting passed?
Well, the question is, what's the likelihood of Mitch McConnell not being a coward? What's the likelihood of Mitch McConnell not openly saying that he has allegiance not to the American people, but to the swamp? It's interesting. The American people have never been more united around this issue. 2016, Donald Trump talks about draining the swamp. He won Mitch McConnell's home state resoundingly. 2018, running in a district that Donald Trump won by more than 10 points, I talked about anti-corruption, and I won. The American people have openly stated what they want. Now what's critical is that we actually follow up on it. The House just passed it. Now Mitch McConnell, who has far too much power in his ability to decide what gets to the floor and what does not, he has to say, look, who do I have allegiance to? Whose side am I on? Am I on the side of the corporate PACs, the federal lobbyists, all those who have bought off our politicians like pharmaceutical companies? Or am I on the side of my own voters, the American people? And I'm eager to see what his decision is, but let's say he continues to ignore it. Those chickens are going to come home to roost in the 2020 election, I guarantee you.
Let's talk about the 2020 election. I have to take a break.
All right.
I want to come back. There's so much more to talk about. We got the opioid crisis. I know you've been involved in that. Also, we have the immigration crisis. Lots more to talk about with freshman Congressman Max Rose when Pix 11 News Close-Up continues. Back with Congressman Max Rose. Let's pick up on the immigration crisis. March alone, over 100,000 undocumented immigrants apprehended at the border. How do we stem the caravans of immigrants trying to get here?
Well, I think it's important that when we look at this issue, we understand that it's complex in nature and requires a holistic, complex policy solution. First and foremost, we have got to make sure that we are investing in these Central American nations that are torn by crisis, and that is instigating so many of these outflows. Second, critical, we have got to invest in our asylum courts. They're obviously overburdened and require additional staffing. That, may I add, is something that this administration has been unwilling to do in accordance with what the experts say is needed. But lastly, okay, I'm the subcommittee chairman of Intelligence and Counterterrorism, okay? We have got to understand that the threats facing us in this city and throughout the country are vast in nature, and we cannot let our eye off the ball. We can't let our eye off the ball of counterterrorism, for instance. Just a few weeks ago, on Facebook Live, can you believe this in this day and age?
The New Zealand.
50 people were massacred in a mosque, and that gunman was allowed to stream it live. Can you believe this? The greatest threat that we face today, in so many ways, and the hardest one for us to protect against, is the notion of this lone gunman who has been inspired by what he or she sees online. We've had 3 terrorist attacks in New York City in the last 3 years or so. 3 just in this city.
So as chair of the committee, the subcommittee on counterterrorism, what action are you seeking against?
So we were able to have a closed-door meeting with the social media companies, Facebook, YouTube, Microsoft was also there, and Twitter. And I asked them a very simple question. How much are you spending on counter-terror screening? This massacre in New Zealand, can you believe that it was viewed millions of times before it was taken down? It was on for 29 minutes before Facebook took it down. So I asked them, how much are you spending on this? Because you have a responsibility to us. Just like auto companies have a responsibility to put in airbags. They couldn't give me an answer. So we followed up with a very public letter demanding that they show us what their budget is for counterterrorism. And I got to tell you, Marvin, if I find out that they spend more on food and travel and lobbying than they do on counterterror screening, I'm going to lose my mind and we're going to haul them back to Congress.
You segued very well into the counterterrorism, but let me go back one step to the crisis of immigration. There's been a suggestion that we cut aid to the Central American countries if they don't hold back all these immigrants coming to our border. Over 100,000.
No, but that's just
how
stupid.
do we?
So
the question
this is the issue.
How do we deal with this?
No, but
you're a member of Congress.
I
you have a
just
voice.
told you. I just told you two critical things that we can do. Two critical things that we can do. But the response is to just play more politics. The response is just do something that is tweetable, that will incite further anger, and will not do anything to solve the problem. I got to tell you, we're not just doing this with immigration, though. We also do this with things like the opioid epidemic. Fentanyl is streaming across our ports of entry, over our mail system today. It's killing kids in my district by the tens, by the hundreds over the course of the years. Just last year, we lost more people to overdoses than we lost in the entirety of the Vietnam War. Can you believe that? If a terrorist organization, if a gang had killed that many people, we'd be doing more about it.
Solution?
But we're just playing politics.
What would your solution be?
Well, my solution is that we have to look to our history, recent history, to see what we did for other public health crises. Just look at HIV/AIDS. We saw a massive investment after we ignored that crisis for far too long. A massive investment in health, treatment, education, prevention, and as it pertains to fentanyl, of course, law enforcement. We got to put our money where our mouth is. We got to have a strategy to back it up, one that's holistic and integrated in nature. And I actually think Staten Island and South Brooklyn would be a great place to pilot it. And I've led a bipartisan effort in Congress to dramatically increase SAMHSA funding for the opioid epidemic. We got to stop just talking about this and spending money on it.
We have a couple of minutes left. I'd like to shift gears and talk a little bit about politics. First of all, we have a Democratic, we have
Sure.
18 candidates
It's got to be more than that now.
18
They're going to start a football
growing
team.
every day.
Yeah.
Who do you see as the Democratic nominee?
Sure.
Who do you think any Democrat can step up to defeat Donald Trump?
It seems like every member of the Democratic Party in this day and age is declaring that they're running for president. I got to tell you, if I was constitutionally allowed to, I would throw. Yeah, I'm too young. Yeah. The biggest problem that we face in our politics today is the never-ending campaign. Take me, for example. I got an opponent 6 days after I was sworn in. 6 days. We cannot be talking about a presidential election right now. Let's talk about the issues.
Who do you like?
I told you.
We have to bring you back.
I told you. I'm not even thinking about them. I'm on strike.
You like
I'm
Joe
on
Biden?
strike. I'm not talking about the presidential election until 2020. The American people need us to at least spend 50% of our time talking about the issues. You just want to talk about the horse race, Marvin. Come on, man. You're better than this. You've been in this game a long time. You're better than this, buddy.
Let's talk about the race for you. Your seat is up next year. You've got Nicole Meliatakis, and you've got the guy Michael Grimm wants to get his seat back.
I heard of him. Well, we'll see if Michael declares or not. I certainly wish him all the best in the world. Nicole attended my swearing in. 6 days later, she declared that she's running against me. I guess it became the most evil person in the world in those 6 days. There's going to be plenty of time for litigating both what I have done for the district as well as whether I should continue in office. I look forward to that discussion. Democracy's beautiful, my friend.
You don't want to get into that now, but we'll have you back. But
good, I hope so.
We have 30 seconds left. I'm getting that cue. What would you say is the one lesson you've learned in your 100 days in Congress? What have you learned?
Look, anything is possible. Anything is possible. Don't take anyone telling you that, oh, this is the way business is always conducted. It's clear that D.C. has failed, and we have to rethink the rules.
I just got the cue. We've got to wrap. Okay. Congressman Max Rose, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks again, buddy.
I'm sure we'll have you back here soon. And that'll do it for our broadcast for this week. If you want to see this broadcast again, log on to our website at pix11.com/News Close-Up. I'm Marvin Scott. Thanks so much for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Everybody's running out on it. Okay, come on back.